I came home from work, thinking it was just another day, but I never expected to walk into the nightmare of my life. I opened the door, expecting a warm greeting, but instead, I was met with the cold silence of betrayal. I had no idea what I was walking into that evening. My wife, Declan, and I had been married for 5 years, and while we had our problems, I never imagined it would come to this. I'd been working long hours, barely home, doing everything I could to provide for us. We just moved into a new house. Life was supposed to be good, or so I thought. But when I opened the door, the first thing I noticed was the emptiness. My heart dropped into my stomach as I stepped inside. The house that was supposed to be our home felt abandoned. No sign of Declan. No sign of our dog, Max. The furniture was gone, the walls bare. It didn't take me long to figure it out. She was gone. I called out for her, but there was nothing. Only silence. I walked further into the house, my thoughts racing. Had she left me? Where was she? What was going on? My mind was swirling with questions, but there was one thing I knew for sure. Something was terribly wrong. And then I saw it. On the kitchen counter, there was an envelope. It had my name on it in her handwriting, but it wasn't the usual note she'd leave me when she was out running errands or at work. This was something different. I could feel my hands trembling as I picked it up and opened it. There it was, in black and white. The words that shattered everything I thought I knew. I've left. I took Max, the car, and the house. I'm sorry, but I need to move on. Don't try to contact me. I stared at the letter, my head spinning. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had just walked out on me. Without a word, without even an explanation. But there was more. At the bottom of the letter, in small, almost too casual handwriting, she'd written, "By the way, I'm with Asher now." Asher. The name hit me like a punch in the gut. Asher was one of my closest friends. We had spent countless hours together, laughed together, shared personal things. And now he was with her. The betrayal cut deeper than any words could describe. I felt like I had been stabbed in the back by 2 people I trusted the most. The anger started to build up in me, but there was a part of me that refused to let it consume me. I wasn't going to beg her to come back. I wasn't going to cry over something I couldn't change. But I wasn't going to let this go either. Declan had taken everything. My dog, my car, my house, and most of all, my trust. But she wasn't going to get away with it. Not without facing the consequences of her actions. I stood there for what felt like hours, the weight of the betrayal heavy on my chest. But then something inside me snapped. This wasn't the end. Couldn't be. She thought she could walk away with my life, but what she didn't know was that I still had one thing left. Control. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her destroy everything I had worked for. I knew I had to do something, and it wasn't going to be about getting revenge the way people usually think of it. No, this was going to be smarter, more calculated. I was going to take back my life, and that meant taking back something far more valuable than the house or the car. I was going to take back her reputation. The plan is starting to take shape. You won't want to miss it. Hit that like button, comment, and make sure to subscribe for the rest of the story. How would you handle being betrayed like this? Let me know in the comments below. The days after Declan left were some of the quietest and most uncomfortable I've ever had. I couldn't stop thinking about what she had done, what Asher had done. I kept going over it all, trying to understand how things had gone so wrong. But one thing was for certain. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let them walk away without facing the consequences of their actions. I knew Declan would try to reach out. I knew Asher would try to salvage what little was left of his life. But I wasn't interested in any of it. I wasn't going to play their game. I had my own plans now, and I wasn't going to let them tear me apart anymore. The first step in my plan was to make sure the truth got out. I didn't care if Declan and Asher tried to play the victim. I wasn't going to let them manipulate the situation. They had made their choices, and now they were going to face the consequences. I knew that Declan would try to apologize, but I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in her excuses, her sob stories, or her attempts to get me back. The damage had been done, and there was no turning back now. But the thing that hurt the most wasn't just losing Declan. It was losing Asher. He had been my best friend, my closest confidant. And now, he was the one who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. Couldn't wrap my head around it. How could he do this to me? The first time Declan reached out, it was via text. She sent a message saying, "Mark, please. I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything. Please let's talk." I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't even read the message. I knew what it said. It was the same thing she had been saying to herself in the mirror every night. Excuses, apologies, lies. I deleted it without a second thought. A few days later, Asher tried to call me. I saw his name flash on my phone, and for a moment, I almost answered. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was still holding on to the small sliver of hope that he would finally admit what he had done. But then I remembered everything. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear him beg. I didn't need to hear him try to justify his actions. But he left a voicemail. "Mark, I know I've messed up. I've lost everything, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I still consider you my friend. And I just need to explain. Please, let's talk." I didn't listen to the rest. It wasn't worth it. He didn't deserve my forgiveness. He didn't deserve my time. I had already made my decision. He was dead to me. The truth started to spread quickly. Word got out about Declan and Asher. People I had once trusted began reaching out to me, asking if it was true. Of course, it was true. And now I had to make sure everyone knew. I wasn't going to let them hide behind their lies anymore. I reached out to a few of our mutual friends, people who had known us both for years. I wanted them to hear the truth from me, not from anyone else. I didn't need their pity, but I needed them to know what had happened. The reactions I got weren't surprising. Some of them were shocked, but most were supportive. They all knew Declan and Asher for who they really were, deep down. And now the truth was coming out. The public fallout was swift. Declan tried to salvage what was left of her reputation, but it was too late. The damage had been done. The whispers had already started, and once the truth started spreading, there was no stopping it. That's when I decided it was time to take the final step. I wasn't just going to sit back and watch them get away with this. I was going to make sure Declan and Asher couldn't run from the consequences of their actions. I called a public relations expert. He was someone I knew through business. Sharp, quick, and discreet. I explained the situation to him, and he agreed to help me. The goal was simple. We needed to make sure that the truth about Declan and Asher wasn't just a rumor. It needed to be out there for everyone to see. The next day, the first article was published. It was subtle at first, just a small local news piece. But it was enough. It was the beginning of the end for them. People who had never known about their betrayal were now reading about it. The story was out in the open, and there was nothing Declan or Asher could do to stop it. The calls started coming in. Friends, family, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all asking me for the truth. But it didn't matter anymore. The truth was out there, and Declan couldn't hide from it. Asher couldn't hide from it. I was finally free. The truth had finally come to light, and as much as Declan tried to fight it, there was no escaping the consequences of what she and Asher had done. The more they tried to make it seem like everything was normal, the more I saw them for who they really were. Two people who thought they could destroy my life and walk away without a second thought. But I wasn't going to let them. The aftermath of the story breaking was chaotic. People who had once been close to both of us were reaching out, asking me what had happened. Friends I thought I could trust began second-guessing Declan and Asher, and I didn't blame them. Their lies were unraveling faster than they could stitch them back together. It was hard to hear the whispers, to know that people I once cared about were now talking behind my back. But in a strange way, it felt like a relief. Declan and Asher were no longer in control. They couldn't manipulate the story anymore. The truth was out there, and they would have to face it. I had already made the decision that I wasn't going to be a victim in this situation. Sure, it hurt like hell, and there were moments when I couldn't believe what had happened. But I wasn't going to sit around and feel sorry for myself. I had a plan, and that plan was about taking back control, taking back my life. I reached out to my lawyer again. This time, it wasn't about divorce proceedings or the house. It was about Asher. I wanted to make sure he knew that his betrayal had consequences, too. Declan had already destroyed any chance of our relationship surviving. But Asher? He was a different story. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't afraid of playing dirty if it meant Asher would face the consequences of what he had done. He couldn't walk away scot-free. A week later, I got a call from Asher. This time, it wasn't a voicemail. He was calling to beg. "Mark," he said, his voice thick with desperation. "Please, just let me explain. I know I've messed up. I never meant for things to go this far, but I can't live with myself anymore. I'm sorry. Please, can we just talk about this?" I let the silence hang between us. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me with his guilt. He had already made his choice, and now he had to face the consequences. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. "Asher," I said, my voice calm but firm, "there's nothing left to talk about. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. I don't need an explanation. I don't need your apology. What I need is for you to understand that you've destroyed everything we had. You've lost my trust, and that's something you can't get back." There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end, struggling to find the right words, but I wasn't giving him the chance. "I'm done with you, Asher. Don't call me again." That night, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. I had cut him out of my life, and it felt like I was finally free of the weight he had placed on me. I wasn't going to let Asher destroy my peace of mind, just like Declan had tried to. But as much as I told myself I was done with them, I knew there was still one thing I had to do. Declan might be out of my life for good, but Asher still had to face the consequences of his actions. The next morning, I took action. I called Asher's boss, the one who had once admired him, trusted him with important projects, and considered him a valuable member of the team. Felt like a small victory at first, but then the real weight of what I was doing hit me. I wasn't just taking back control of my life. I was making sure Asher paid for his betrayal. I told his boss everything. The affair, the lies, the way Asher had destroyed everything I had worked for. I didn't care how it looked. I wasn't trying to ruin his life, but he needed to face the truth. A few hours later, I got the confirmation. Asher's boss had decided to let him go. He was fired. I didn't feel joy or satisfaction, not at first. But then I realized this was justice. This was him facing the consequences of what he had done to me. He had destroyed my trust, my marriage, and my life. Now I had made sure he couldn't escape it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Declan was trying to piece her life back together, but nothing was ever going to be the same. Her reputation was shattered, and Asher was out of a job. As much as they tried to salvage what was left, I knew the truth, and the truth had a way of sticking. As the weeks went by, the dust began to settle, but the damage that Declan and Asher had caused could not be undone. Declan tried to pick up the pieces of her shattered life, and Asher was now out of a job, left to deal with the consequences of his actions. But the truth was, no matter how much they tried to move on, they would never escape the damage they had done. But I wasn't done with them. Not yet. Declan had begun reaching out again, sending texts, voicemails, and even trying to come to my house. But each time I ignored her. I had already made my decision. I wasn't interested in hearing her apologies, her excuses, or her promises that things would be different. She had taken everything from me. She didn't get to just waltz back into my life and pretend it didn't happen. It wasn't just about her. Asher was in the same boat. The way he tried to reach out, trying to get back into my life, pretending like nothing had happened, disgusted me. Asher had been my best friend. We had shared everything. And now he was a stranger, a man who had destroyed the very foundation of our friendship. But as much as I was done with them, I knew I wasn't just going to move on and forget. I had to make sure they paid. Not just emotionally, not just financially, but in a way that would make them remember the consequences of their betrayal every single day. The first step was to hit them where it hurt most, their reputations. I had made sure that the story about their affair was well known. Declan's friends, her colleagues, even some of her family had been made aware of what she had done. As for Asher, I made sure the story of his betrayal wasn't just between us. It was for everyone to know. I had a small circle of people who were willing to help spread the truth, people who wanted to see justice done. It wasn't enough that they had lost their jobs, their homes, their trust. They needed to lose their credibility. They needed to feel the weight of what they had done to me, and more importantly, to each other. But Declan didn't just sit back. She reached out to me again, this time with an even more desperate plea. Mark, I know you're angry, and I know I've done things that can't be undone. But I need you to understand that I've changed. I'm sorry for everything. I know I made a mistake, and I just want a chance to make it right. Her words felt hollow, empty. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry for getting caught. She was sorry for losing everything she thought she could take with her. She wasn't the victim here. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I didn't respond to her message. There was nothing more to say. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Asher, the man who had been my best friend, the man who had helped Declan destroy everything, now had nowhere to hide. I'd heard from some of his former colleagues. They had seen his name dragged through the mud, his career in shambles. It wasn't just the affair with Declan that had ruined his reputation. It was the betrayal of me, his friend. I wasn't the only one who had suffered. Asher was beginning to feel the isolation I had felt. He had lost the respect of everyone around him, and it wasn't long before I got word that he was fired from his new job. When I received the news, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. Instead, I felt a strange calmness. It was justice, but it didn't feel like revenge. I had done what I needed to do, but I wasn't celebrating their downfall. I was simply reclaiming my peace. One day, I got a text from Asher. Mark, I know I've messed up. I understand if you never want to speak to me again, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for what I did to you. I regret everything. I didn't even open the message. There was nothing left to say. I had made my peace with the situation, and Asher had no place in my life anymore. As for Declan, she tried to get close once again, reaching out through every possible channel, but I had already made up my mind. I wasn't the same man I was before this all happened. I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore, allowing someone to walk all over me. She had taken my trust, my home, my happiness, but she couldn't take my dignity. She couldn't take my future. And the more she tried to break through, the more I realized I was stronger than ever. I was finally free. Free from the betrayal, free from the lies, and free from the pain. They had thought they could tear my life apart, but in the end, I had taken back control. I had made sure they knew that betrayal had consequences, and the consequences were unforgiving. The silence in my life was deafening after everything had gone down. But this was a different kind of silence, one of peace. I had finally stopped reacting to Declan's attempts at getting me back, and I was starting to rebuild. I was beginning to feel like me again. The weight of the betrayal was lifting, and I was no longer allowing Declan and Asher to control my every thought. But it didn't mean I was done yet. Over the next few weeks, I started making plans. Not just for my future, but for theirs. Declan and Asher thought they could walk away and move on. But I wasn't about to let them live their lives in peace while I suffered in silence. The next part of my plan was simple. I needed to make sure they'd never forget what they did to me. I began by getting in touch with a few old acquaintances, people who had been close to both Declan and Asher. I told them my side of the story. I wanted to make sure that the truth about their betrayal wasn't lost. And when the truth comes out, there's no escaping it. It wasn't just about telling the people I knew. It was about making sure Declan and Asher were held accountable for their actions, even if they tried to act like it never happened. One afternoon, I received a call from a mutual friend of mine and Declan's. It was clear from the moment they spoke that they had been hearing the whispers about her. But what struck me the most was when they said, "Mark, you're not the only one who's been affected by this. People are starting to talk. Declan's friends are distancing themselves from her, and her colleagues are starting to question her integrity." I leaned back in my chair, a sense of satisfaction settling over me. She hadn't just destroyed me. She was destroying herself. Asher was feeling the heat too. No one was going to forget what they did. A few days later, I received another message from Asher. It was the same tired apology he'd been trying to sell me since the day it all fell apart. But this time, there was something different about it. It wasn't just desperate, it was nervous. "Mark, I'm really sorry. I know this is all my fault. I don't know how to fix this. I messed up, and I don't know how to move on." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I could tell he was broken. But this wasn't about making him feel better. It was about making sure he knew exactly what he'd lost. I typed back, "It's too late for apologies, Asher. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. Asher and Declan had nothing left to offer me, and I was ready to leave them behind in the past. But Declan? She was a different story. She wasn't going down quietly. Every time I thought she would leave me alone, she tried harder to get back into my life. One evening, she showed up at my door uninvited. I didn't know what to expect. I certainly didn't expect to see her, standing there, looking so defeated. But when she opened her mouth, it was the same tired script she had been rehearsing for weeks. "Mark, please. I'm so sorry. I made a huge mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you, I swear. Can we please just talk?" I didn't even let her finish. "You've said enough already," I said, my voice cold but steady. "There's nothing left to talk about. You chose Asher, and now you're going to have to live with that choice. I've already made mine. You've lost me, and you've lost everything else." She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. "You don't get to come back into my life just because you made a mistake. Your actions have consequences, and you're going to have to face them. I'm done. We're done." She stood there for a moment, completely still. I saw the pain in her eyes, but it wasn't my problem anymore. She had chosen her path, and now she had to walk it alone. I closed the door behind her without saying another word. The next morning, I got word that Asher had been officially fired from his job. The word was starting to spread, and now, no matter what they did, they couldn't hide anymore. Declan had been trying to reach out, sending me one last message. "Mark, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm really sorry for everything. Please, can we talk one last time?" I didn't even open the message. I was done. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. The reality was that she had made her choice, and she couldn't come back from it. It felt good to finally have the power in my hands again. They had destroyed everything I had worked for, but I had taken everything back. And more. Declan and Asher had nothing left. They had lost their credibility, their respect, and their lives as they knew it. And as I sat back, reflecting on the last few months, I realized something. I was finally free. It had been weeks since I had made the decision to stop engaging with Declan and Asher. They tried reaching out, sending texts, calling me, showing up at my door. But no matter how hard they tried, I wasn't giving them another chance. The damage was done, and now they would have to live with the consequences of their actions. But while I was getting my life back together, they were spiraling. Asher had lost his job, and Declan, though still trying to maintain some semblance of dignity, was facing the fallout of her choices. The cracks in their little world were starting to show. I, on the other hand, was moving on. The first step to healing was simple. I had to focus on myself. I started to surround myself with real friends, people who weren't just there when things were easy, but people who were loyal and had my back. The healing wasn't quick, but it was steady. One afternoon, as I was at the gym working out, I got a call from one of Declan's former colleagues. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. It was time to hear what the world had been saying about her. "Hey, is this Calvin?" The voice on the other end asked. "Yeah. Who is this?" I replied, slightly wary. "Look, I know this might be a tough time for you, but I just wanted to let you know that Declan is in serious trouble at work. She's been lying to her team, and it's starting to show. People are questioning her judgment, and some of her projects are falling apart. She's not as untouchable as she thinks she is." I felt a strange satisfaction hearing this. For so long, Declan had been the golden girl, charming everyone, acting like the perfect wife, the perfect professional. Now the truth was catching up with her, and she was struggling hard. "Thanks for letting me know," I said calmly. But I don't feel sorry for her. The line went silent for a second, and I could hear the person on the other end hesitate before speaking again. I just wanted you to be aware. The truth always comes out in the end. I hung up, my heart a little lighter than it had been in weeks. There it was. Declan's perfect little world was crumbling, just like she had tried to do to me. That night, I was sitting in my living room when I got another message from Asher. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. Mark, I know you hate me right now. I know I've lost everything, and I don't know what to do. I've been thinking a lot, and I just want to say that I am truly sorry for everything. I never meant for it to go this far. I read it over, and I didn't feel the anger I thought I would. In fact, I didn't feel anything. It wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't even about Declan. It was about me. I had taken back control of my life. I wasn't going to waste another second of it on their apologies, their guilt, their regrets. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their drama. I typed a short response. I'm done with you, Asher. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I pressed send. And just like that, Asher was erased from my life. He no longer had a place in it. I could feel the weight lifting off me. The world was moving on. Declan and Asher could try to rebuild their lives, but no matter what they did, they would never have the same trust, the same respect, the same peace of mind I was starting to build again. A few days later, Declan tried one last time to reach me. This time, she sent a long message, probably the longest one I had ever received from her. Mark, I know I have lost everything. I can't take back what I did, and I know you will never forgive me. But please understand that I never wanted to hurt you. I'm lost. I don't know where to go from here. I don't want to be this person. I'm sorry for everything. I sat with the message for a while, reading and rereading it. I wasn't moved. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was just done. So I did the same thing I had been doing all along. I ignored it. I wasn't going to fall for her tears. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. Declan had chosen her path, and now she would have to walk it alone. As the weeks went on, I kept my focus on rebuilding. I worked hard, spent time with people who valued me, and slowly but surely, I was getting back to the person I used to be. Declan and Asher would continue to fall apart, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. I wasn't looking for their downfall, but I wasn't going to hide the truth either. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about me finally taking my life back. The storm that had been brewing for months was finally starting to subside. Declan and Asher had lost everything. Their lives, once full of lies and deception, were crumbling beneath them. I could see it all around me. The whispers, the stares, the way people started avoiding them. The fallout from their betrayal had reached its peak, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of calm in knowing that I had made sure they would never be able to escape the consequences of their actions. But as much as they suffered, the truth was, I didn't care about their pain anymore. I wasn't here to watch them suffer. I was here to reclaim what was mine. My life, my dignity, and my future. And that's exactly what I had done. It had been weeks since I last heard from Declan. Her attempts at reaching out had become less frequent, more desperate. But now there was no need for her apologies, no need for her pleas to fix things. I had moved on. I was finally free from the grip of her betrayal. The pain had faded, and the only thing left was the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been done. I had rebuilt my life step by step. I spent more time with my friends, began working on new projects, and even started considering what my future could look like without her in it. It was strange at first to picture a life without the woman I once loved. But now, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Then, out of nowhere, I received a call. This time, it wasn't Declan. It was a mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't heard from in a while. Hey, Calvin. I heard what happened, and I just wanted to check in. You all right? I wasn't expecting the call, but it was a welcome one. I'm doing better, thanks, I replied. I've had some time to process it all, and now I'm just focusing on moving forward. Good to hear, man. I won't keep you, but I thought you should know. Declan's been making the rounds, trying to spin the whole story. She's telling people she was the victim, saying you pushed her into everything, that she had no choice but to leave. I paused. I had suspected Declan would try to rewrite the story, but hearing it confirmed felt like a punch in the gut. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate the narrative. Not now, not ever. She's lying, I said firmly. She chose to leave. She chose Asher. And she has to live with that. The person on the other end was quiet for a moment. But then they spoke again. I figured as much. People are starting to catch on, though. They're seeing through her act. It's just a matter of time now. It was exactly what I needed to hear. Declan had tried to rewrite the story, to make herself the victim of a situation she created. But the truth was starting to shine through. She couldn't hide from it anymore. The people who once believed her were now starting to question her every word. It was justice in the form of exposure. No matter how hard she tried to twist the truth, no matter how many people she manipulated, the truth had a way of getting out. The next week, I bumped into someone I hadn't seen in a while. Asher. It wasn't by choice, and I certainly didn't want to be in the same room with him, but life had a funny way of bringing people together when you least expected it. We stood there for a few seconds, the tension palpable. Neither of us said a word at first, but finally, I broke the silence. "How's it going, Asher?" I asked, my tone steady but uninviting. He looked uncomfortable. "I know things are bad, but I want you to know, I never meant for any of this to happen." I couldn't even bring myself to care about his words anymore. "It's too late, Asher. You don't get to apologize. You chose her. You chose to destroy everything we had. And now you have to deal with the fallout." He opened his mouth, as though he was about to say something more, but I cut him off. "No more apologies, Asher. You made your choice. Now you'll have to live with it, just like Declan." With that, I turned and walked away. Asher didn't follow. I didn't need him to. The damage had already been done. A few days later, I got the news. Declan had been fired from her job. Her performance had taken a nosedive, and her colleagues were no longer willing to overlook her past actions. The public exposure had already started to eat away at her credibility. People were questioning her loyalty, her honesty, and her integrity. In the end, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about tearing them down. It was about justice, about making sure that Declan and Asher would never forget what they had done. The final blow came when I saw a report in the local news. Declan had been caught in yet another lie. She had been falsifying records at work. She had tried to cover it up, but the truth had caught up with her. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. I didn't feel the need to celebrate. I didn't need to see Declan and Asher suffer anymore. The truth had been exposed. Declan had been caught. Asher had been fired. They had lost everything they had built. And I had my freedom. I had taken back what was mine. Not just in terms of material things, but my peace, my dignity, and my future. It had been months since Declan and Asher's betrayal first shattered my life. Months of pain, anger, and heartbreak. But now, as I looked back on everything that had happened, I felt something different. I felt peace. I had taken back everything that mattered. My dignity, my future, and most importantly, my freedom. Declan had tried one last time to make amends. But it was too late. I had long since moved on. I didn't need her apologies anymore. I didn't need her in my life. She had made her choices, and now she was paying the price. The job, the reputation, the respect she had worked so hard to build. They were all gone. The public backlash had become too much for her to handle. She had lost everything. And I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that she had to face the consequences of her actions. I'd heard from a few people about Asher. His life had fallen apart too. After being fired from his job, he couldn't land anything else. His friends had distanced themselves from him, and he was left to face the consequences of his betrayal. No one trusted him anymore. Not me, not anyone. I didn't feel sympathy. Asher was a coward, and he had made a choice. Now he had to live with it. A few days ago, I received a call. It was from one of Declan's old friends. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Calvin." Her voice was tentative, hesitant. "I know this might be hard to hear, but I just wanted to let you know. People are starting to see the truth. Declan is being left out in the cold now. Her reputation is ruined, and she's trying to find someone to blame. I just thought you should know. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting the words sink in. Declan had tried to salvage her life, but no matter how hard she fought, the truth had already been exposed. The whispers, the rumors, the exposure, it was all coming back to her. She couldn't hide anymore. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, my voice calm. "I'm not worried about it anymore. I've moved on. I didn't care about the drama anymore. What mattered now was that I had reclaimed my life." Declan had lost her job, her friends, her reputation. Asher was alone, trying to pick up the pieces of a life he had ruined. And me? I was moving forward. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when I received a letter in the mail from the lawyer handling my divorce. Declan had signed the final documents. It was over. The house was officially mine, the assets divided, and there was nothing left to fight for. She was out of my life for good. I spent the next few weeks in quiet reflection, looking at my life with a new perspective. I was free. Free from the anger. Free from the pain. And most importantly, free from Declan and Asher. It wasn't just about what I had lost. It was about what I had gained. I had taken control back. I had shown them that betrayal came with consequences, and I had ensured that they could never escape that. The lessons they learned were hard, but they were the ones who had made the choices. Now they had to live with them. As for me, I started looking forward to the future. I didn't know what it held yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I was in control. I had survived, and I was stronger than I had ever been. The pain, the heartache, the betrayal, they were all behind me now. And in the end, I had found my peace. If you followed Calvin's journey to justice, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. This story was all about taking back control, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. How would you have handled this betrayal? Did Calvin's actions resonate with you? Let me know in the comments below. Your comments help shape the next chapter of incredible stories, so don't forget to share your thoughts. And remember, the power of justice is within you. Stay strong,